Welcome to Side Projects. This is where we talk about some of the things I do that don't require a full series, but they were still an involved enough project that I think you might enjoy it. This is a wrist-rack view. Don't let the Wister badge fool you. As you can see, it's kind of a large camera. You could even say it's large format. Now, there's lots of things I love about these cameras, but the one thing that isn't so good is lugging them around. You want a really secure backpack, but not a lot of those exist on the market. So aside from making your own, you got to find other options. And so I was looking at some other people and their Darkcloths, and I thought, hey, what if I made a Darkcloth that was a wrap that was also kind of protective? So I came up with this. Let me show you the basic process of how I built it. So like all projects worth their while, I start out by creating a bit of a template. In this case, I'm just using brown paper. It's a really good prototyping tool. If you've never tried sort of building out an experimental unit before, this is a great place to start. Particularly with anything that's in fabric, it's always a good facsimile. Here you can see I'm playing around with how the camera is going to sit in the unit. At this point, I have this idea of kind of like folding it into a corner, but as the project goes on, I discover that's not really going to work. But I don't let that stop me, and thankfully I could change the design later, which is pretty good. But I always had in my mind that I wanted to have an outer denim shell, so it's kind of dark and it can be waterproofed. And in the middle, you'll see in a second, I go to add a layer of like an old towel. And I think this worked really well. The reason why I decided to go for that was to give it a bit of protection. So it's going to dampen slight impacts. It's also going to make it like nice and soft. And if it happens to rain a little bit, it will absorb a little bit of water, which is both a good and a bad thing. And then here we have the inner layer, which is just some blue cotton. And it's really there just to hold everything together. So I'm just cutting everything out to shape with my fantastic scissors that I love. It's always nice to just use good tools. And these are a pair of Ginger scissors that I love. Here you can see me just kind of putting things in the wrong order. I do figure this out before I start sewing everything together, but yeah, you see here I got the towel on top, and then the denim, and then the inner layer. Yeah, if you think about how you got to flip this whole thing around and inside out, you can't put the middle layer in the middle. Now I get out my trusty steed of a sewing machine. This thing is pretty heavy duty. It only does straight stitches, but that's okay. That's all we need for this project. I'm just putting a very simple rectangle together, but because we have the denim and the towel, I really need a pretty heavy duty sewing machine to get through all of those layers. Most sewing machines can do this, but being able to go at my own pace, I've always found is really helpful. Now, we use these little sort of hammer-in studs that are clips, and they don't really work properly. This is a huge problem. I had these laying around from like another project, and I should have learned. And very silly, I put it all together because I wanted to go out and take some photos that night. But these don't really work properly, so I will change those later. But it does kind of work, and you can see here the whole thing's kind of coming together. And I do like the idea, it's just a few little details need changing. But anyway, I decided to go on the train and take my camera in my backpack. And I will at some point show you what this photo looks like once it's done. Here's me using the camera in the cold. But I haven't developed it yet, so that's something that we might talk about a bit. So at this stage I decide that I'm going to need to change it over to these other little clips that kind of go in. They're not quite as heavy duty, but the old ones don't work. So now I need to pull out all of those studs that I hammered in, and the only way I could figure out how to do it is I had to take out the edge that I made to hold this whole thing together, and then I needed to sew the new ones in, but only after I'd gotten pliers to rip out those metal studs. It was quite an ordeal. But here you'll see me with a different sewing machine, and I just use that to do a very simple stitch, you can see it here, to go over the edge. And then lastly, I had some beeswax lying around, and I'm essentially just painting it into the denim surface. And it doesn't look the best. You can see here there's a couple little splotches and things like that. That's okay, I'll keep on working on it. This isn't quite done yet because I think it's not sitting perfectly flat, and that's because I didn't nail sewing in the new clip things. I might give that another go. And the only other thing is, in the long term, I want some kind of a strap or maybe a buckle to hold this all together. And we'll see how that goes. It's not necessary. This already works as a dark cloth. It kind of protects it from the weather, so it's good enough. So with that in mind, I hope it inspires you to go out and make your own photographic accessories.